Imagine a language that no one has ever seen written down, no one has ever recorded, and no one has spoken for thousands of years, yet scholars can still reconstruct parts of it with surprising confidence. That language is called Proto-Indo-European, often shortened to PIE. It is believed to be the common ancestor of a huge family of languages that includes English, German, Spanish, French, Greek, Russian, Persian, Hindi, and many others. In other words, billions of people today speak languages that may trace back to this one prehistoric source. Proto-Indo-European is not known from tablets, inscriptions, or ancient books. It is known through patterns. Linguists compared related languages, noticed systematic similarities, and worked backward. The result is one of the most ambitious detective stories in the history of human culture, the reconstruction of a vanished mother tongue. The first important point is that Proto-Indo-European is reconstructed, not discovered. There is no surviving Proto-Indo-European manuscript sitting in a museum. No king carved it into stone. No priest copied it into a sacred text. Instead, linguists infer its features from later languages that clearly share ancestry. Think of it like reconstructing a family tree when the oldest ancestor left no photograph. If several descendants share the same unusual nose, the same eye color, or the same inherited condition, you can make careful guesses about the ancestor. Linguists do something similar with words, sounds, grammar, and word endings. When English, German, Latin, Greek, Sanskrit, and other languages show matching patterns too precise to be accidental, those patterns point backward toward an earlier common form. One famous example is the word for three. English has three, Latin had trace, Greek had trice, and Sanskrit had trias. These words are not identical, but their similarities are not random either. The initial T sound, the R sound, and the general shape of the word appear across distant branches of the language family. Linguists compare many such forms and apply known sound correspondences. Over time, they reconstruct a likely ancestral form, conventionally written with an asterisk to show that it is not directly attested. So a Proto-Indo-European form like asterisk trace means, this is the scholarly reconstruction of the ancestor of later words for three. The asterisk is a warning label. It says, we did not find this word, we inferred it. This method is not guesswork in the casual sense. It depends on the comparative method, one of the core tools of historical linguistics. The basic idea is that sound changes are usually regular, not chaotic. If one language systematically turns an older P sound into an F sound in many words, linguists can track that pattern. They do not rely on one attractive similarity. They look for repeated correspondences across hundreds or thousands of words. That is why Proto-Indo-European became so important to linguistics as a discipline. During the 19th century, enormous scholarly energy went into reconstructing PIE and its daughter languages. Many of the methods now used to reconstruct other proto-languages were refined through this work. PIE became both a subject of study and a testing ground for linguistic science. The Indo-European language family is vast because its branches spread over enormous distances and long periods of time. Ancient daughter languages included Sanskrit in South Asia, Ancient Greek in the Mediterranean, Latin in Italy, Old Persian in Iran, and early Germanic and Celtic languages in Europe. These languages later produced many modern descendants. Latin evolved into the Romance languages, such as Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Germanic branches gave rise to English, German, Dutch, Swedish, and others. Slavic branches include Russian, Polish, Ukrainian, Serbian, and more. The family resemblance is not always obvious on the surface because thousands of years of change have reshaped vocabulary and pronunciation. But underneath, deep structural and lexical connections remain. When might Proto-Indo-European have been spoken? A common estimate places it somewhere between about 4,500 BCE and 2,500 BCE, from the late Neolithic into the early Bronze Age, though some scholarly models shift the timeline later. This was not the world of classical empires, written philosophy, or alphabetic literature. It was a prehistoric world of small communities, migration, herding, trade, and technological change. Because there are no direct texts, the language itself becomes a kind of archaeological artifact. Reconstructed vocabulary can suggest what its speakers knew or valued. If a proto-language has reconstructible words for certain animals, tools, kinship roles, or social structures, that gives clues about the environment and culture of the people who spoke it. The leading homeland theory is often called the Kurgan hypothesis. It places the original Proto-Indo-European speakers in or near the Pontic-Caspian steppe, a broad grassland zone stretching across parts of Eastern Europe and Western Central Asia. The word Kurgan refers to burial mounds associated with steppe cultures. According to this model, mobile pastoral communities expanded from this region and carried related dialects with them. As groups moved, separated, and settled in different areas, their speech changed in different directions. Over generations, dialect differences became distinct languages. This theory connects linguistic reconstruction with archaeology and population movement, though debates remain. The key idea is that language spread was not an abstract process. It was carried by real communities moving through real landscapes. One reason Proto-Indo-European fascinates scholars is that it was grammatically complex. It likely had a rich system of inflection, meaning that words changed form depending on their role in a sentence. English still has traces of this. We say child, child's, children, and children's. But many older Indo-European languages had far more extensive case systems, with nouns changing endings to mark subject, object, possession, direction, instrument, and other relationships. Proto-Indo-European nouns and pronouns are believed to have used declensions, where endings signaled grammatical function. This means word order may have been more flexible than in modern English, because endings carried information that English often expresses through position. Grammar was built directly into the shape of words. Proto-Indo-European verbs were also highly structured. They likely changed form to show person, number, tense, aspect, mood, and voice. That may sound technical, but the basic idea is familiar. In English, we say I sing, he sings, I sang, and I have sung. The verb changes to show who is acting and when or how the action unfolds. PIE appears to have had a much richer version of this kind of system. One especially important feature was ablaut, a pattern of vowel alternation inside related words. English preserves a faint echo in sing, sang, sung, and song. These vowel shifts are not random decorations. In older Indo-European grammar, such internal vowel changes could help mark grammatical distinctions and word formation. Another striking feature is that linguists can reconstruct not only individual words, but parts of a worldview. PIE vocabulary suggests a society familiar with animals, kinship, herding, and social hierarchy. Scholars have used reconstructed terms to infer aspects of pastoral life and patriarchal family structure. Religious vocabulary and mythic patterns across Indo-European traditions have also encouraged comparisons. For example, different Indo-European cultures preserve echoes of sky gods, storm gods, sacred fire, divine twins, and heroic combat myths. These comparisons must be handled carefully, because myths change dramatically over time. Still, when language, ritual vocabulary, and story patterns overlap across distant traditions, they may preserve fragments of a much older shared inheritance. The breakup of Proto-Indo-European was not a single moment when one language suddenly became many. It was a long process of separation. Imagine neighboring communities speaking mutually understandable dialects. Then some groups migrate, trade patterns shift, mountains or rivers separate populations, and children grow up hearing slightly different pronunciations and word choices. Over centuries, small differences accumulate. Sounds shift. Endings erode or expand. New words are borrowed from neighbors. Old words take on new meanings. Eventually, speakers from distant branches can no longer understand each other. What began as regional variation becomes separate languages. This is how Proto-Indo-European dialects are thought to have developed into the ancient Indo-European languages known from history. What makes Proto-Indo-European so powerful as an idea is that it reveals history hidden inside ordinary speech. When you say words like water, three, mother, or night, you may be using distant descendants of forms spoken thousands of years ago. Modern English looks very different from Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, or Persian, but they are connected by layers of change. PIE reminds us that languages are not isolated inventions. They are living archives, carrying traces of migration, contact, memory, and transformation. The lost language itself is silent, but its descendants are everywhere. Every reconstructed root is a small bridge back to people who left no writing, but whose speech still echoes in the modern world. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.